For most of human existence, you were not the top of the food chain. You were meat. Slow, soft, clawless, fangless, and walking on two legs that any half-decent cat could outrun in a sprint. And yet here you are, watching a screen, in a heated room, behind a locked door. Statistically, almost every species that looked like us, small-brained hominins, side branches, cousins, experiments, got eaten into extinction. We didn't. And the popular explanation for that, the one you've heard 100 times, is wrong. You've heard it before. Ancient humans survived because they were smart, because they had tools, because they had fire. Tidy, satisfying, and the kind of answer that fits on a museum plaque. But when you actually look at the evidence, the fossil bites, the cave layouts, the predator bones stacked next to ours, that story falls apart almost immediately. Smart didn't save us at first. Tools didn't save us at first. Even fire shows up suspiciously late in the timeline. So what did? That's what we're going to work out, piece by piece, like a cold case file that's been sitting in the dirt for 2 million years. Let's start with the crime scene. Around 2 million years ago, in the open woodlands of East Africa, there was a small upright primate called Homo habilis. Brain about half the size of yours, maybe 1.2 meters tall. No claws, no real fangs, no speed, and living in the most predator-dense environment in the history of vertebrate life. We're talking saber-toothed cats with canines like steak knives, giant hyenas the size of lionesses, false saber-tooths called dinophelus that some researchers genuinely think specialized in hunting our ancestors, crocodiles in every river, leopards in every tree. There's a famous fossil, a young hominin skull from South Africa called the Tong child, with puncture marks in the eye sockets. The current best guess is that an eagle killed it. An eagle. That's the world we walked into. Now here's where the popular explanation tries to step in. It says, but our ancestors had stone tools. They could fight back, and you've seen the pictures. A confident hominin holding up a sharpened rock, snarling at a saber-tooth. It looks heroic. It's also nonsense. The earliest stone tools we have, the Oldowan flakes, are basically sharp pebbles, good for cutting meat off a carcass. Useless against a charging cat that weighs 400 pounds and reaches you in under 2 seconds. If you've ever seen footage of a leopard taking a baboon, you know how this ends. A pebble doesn't change that math. And this is where the popular explanation starts to fall apart. Because if tools didn't save us, and brains alone didn't save us, early hominin brains were not that much bigger than a chimpanzee's, then we have to ask what actually did. The data points somewhere unexpected. It points to behavior. Specifically, a bundle of behaviors, so ordinary, so unflashy, that they almost never make it into the documentaries. Piece of evidence number 1. Sleep. You think of sleep as a vulnerability, and for most prey animals it is. A zebra sleeps in tiny fragments, maybe 20 minutes at a time, always half alert. A gorilla builds a nest on the ground and sleeps about 12 hours. Now look at us. We sleep, on average, around 7 hours, deeply, in one solid block, often unconscious enough that you don't notice the smoke alarm. From a predator's perspective, that should be a death sentence. A sleeping hominin is a free meal. So how did we get away with it? Researchers like David Sampson at the University of Toronto have spent years studying sleep in hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania. And what he found is this. They don't all sleep at the same time. Across a band of 30 or so people, there is almost always somebody awake. Somebody nursing a baby, somebody old who can't sleep deeply anymore, somebody just stirring the fire. Over a typical night, you can map the camp, and there is never more than a few minutes of total collective unconsciousness. They call it the sentinel hypothesis. Our deep, efficient sleep wasn't a weakness. It was only possible because we were sleeping in shifts, all night, every night, for hundreds of thousands of years. We didn't outfang the predators. We outscheduled them. The data says something different from the lone hero story you've been told. The unit of survival was never the individual. It was the group, awake in rotation, watching the dark. Piece of evidence number 2. The carry. Here's a fact that doesn't get enough attention. Human infants are physically incapable of clinging. A baby chimp grabs its mother's fur from the moment it's born and holds on. A human baby cannot. Your hands at birth grip like wet noodles. Your legs don't lock around anything, which means for the entire history of our lineage, a human mother who wanted to move had to carry her baby, actively, with one or both arms. That is a wild evolutionary handicap to take into a predator-rich landscape. And yet, and this is where it gets strange, we did it anyway. The fossil record shows hominin mothers traveling long distances with infants for at least the last 2 million years. So somebody had to be helping. The math doesn't work otherwise. A mother carrying an infant cannot also carry food, cannot run from a leopard, cannot scan the horizon. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has built an entire career around this point. Human survival, she argues, depended on something called cooperative breeding. Other adults, grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, sometimes unrelated group members, helped care for, carry, and protect children who weren't biologically theirs. No other great ape does this routinely. Chimps don't share babies. Gorillas don't share babies. We do. And the evidence suggests we have been doing it since before we were even fully human. Think about what that does to a predator. A leopard's hunting strategy is to isolate one animal from the group, to wait for the straggler, the mother with the baby, the old one lagging behind. Now imagine that prey species has decided as a baseline that nobody travels alone. The straggler always has 2 or 3 others within arm's reach. The mother is never the slowest because someone is carrying for her. The old one is at the center, not the edge. Suddenly, the leopard's entire strategy stops working. We didn't beat predators with claws. We beat them with logistics. This is the part of the story the popular version skips, because logistics is boring. Sharpened sticks are exciting. A grandmother quietly carrying a toddler so her daughter can dig tubers is not exciting. But the bones say the grandmother is the reason you exist. Piece of evidence number 3. The throw. Now this one is going to feel like it contradicts what I just said about tools. But stay with me, because it's a specific kind of tool use that changed everything. Look at your shoulder. Roll it. That joint, the way the ball sits loose in the socket, the way your collarbone is angled. None of that is standard primate equipment. A chimpanzee, for all its strength, throws like a toddler, maybe 20 miles an hour, badly aimed. You, an untrained office worker, can throw a rock at probably 40 miles an hour with reasonable accuracy. A trained human pitcher can throw at over 100. Neil Roach at Harvard has done the biomechanics on this, and the conclusion is striking. The human shoulder is essentially an evolved slingshot. It stores elastic energy in the tendons and releases it in a way no other animal can. When did this evolve? Around 2 million years ago, right when we start to see hominins moving into more open, more dangerous environments. The timing is not a coincidence. A hominin who can accurately throw a rock at 30 meters can do something no other prey animal in history has ever been able to do. Hurt a predator from a distance. You don't have to kill the leopard. You don't even have to hit it hard. You just have to make the equation of attacking you slightly worse than walking away. Predators are accountants. They do not engage in fights they might lose. A bleeding eye, a cracked tooth, a bruised rib, any one of those is a death sentence for a wild carnivore that depends on perfect hunting to survive. So picture it now. A group of hominins, awake in shifts, traveling together, carrying each other's children. They spot a leopard in the brush. They don't scatter like antelopes. They don't freeze like deer. They pick up stones, 20 of them, 30 of them, and they throw, not to kill, to make the cat go away. And the cat, calculating, goes away. Multiply that by every day for 1 million years, across every group, across every generation. That is how a soft, slow primate becomes something predators learn to avoid. You start to see the pattern, don't you? The thing that saved us was never one heroic trait. It was the stack. Piece of evidence number 4. And this is the one where I want you to feel the ground shift. Fire. You've been told that fire was a great human invention, the thing that made us human. And it is huge, cooked food, longer lives, bigger brains, all of it. But for the question of predators, fire's role is more specific and more recent than most people realize. The earliest really convincing evidence of habitual controlled fire use is somewhere around 400,000 years ago. Maybe earlier in some sites, but reliably broadly every night fire. Surprisingly late. Which means for most of our existence as a genus, we were doing all of this. The sleep shifts, the carrying, the throwing in the dark. Without fire, when fire finally does become normal, the change is enormous. And you can see it in the archaeology. Cave sites that used to be shared with hyenas and bears start to show only human layers. The carnivores get pushed out. Not because we fought them, because we lit up the entrance and they wouldn't come near. A campfire is not a weapon. It's a signal. It says this space is occupied by something organized enough to control a small piece of the sun. Predators read that signal and go elsewhere. And here is where the popular explanation finally collapses. Because if fire was the answer, we wouldn't have survived the 400,000 to 2 million year window before fire was reliable. We wouldn't have made it out of East Africa. We wouldn't have crossed into Eurasia, into Ice Age Europe, into landscapes full of cave lions and cave bears and dire wolves. But we did, long before the campfires got reliable, which means fire wasn't the foundation. Fire was the upgrade. The foundation was already there, built out of behavior, the sleeping in shifts, the carrying, the throwing, the staying together. Piece of evidence number 5. This one is subtle, and it's where the modern picture starts to come into focus. Look at your face. Look at any human face. Now look at the face of a chimpanzee. One of the most striking differences is the whites of your eyes. Chimps have dark sclera. Their eyes are essentially all pupils from a distance. You can't tell where they're looking. Yours are bright white around a dark center. Anyone in your group can tell, from across a clearing, exactly what you are looking at. There's a hypothesis called the cooperative eye hypothesis, developed by Michael Tomasello and others, and it suggests that human eye coloration evolved specifically to make our gaze readable to other humans, which is a wild thing for a prey animal to do. Every other animal on Earth tries to hide where it's looking. We advertise it. Why? Because if you and I are walking through the grass and I see a movement in the brush, I don't need to shout. I just need to look. And you, watching my eyes, will look too. And so will the third person and the fourth. Within a second, every adult in the group is staring at the exact same patch of grass. The predator, which was relying on stealth, has just lost its main weapon. It has been seen by 10 pairs of eyes at once. This is not the kind of thing you can fight off with a sharpened stick. This is a species-level surveillance system built into our bodies, communicated in silence. We didn't just live in groups. We became, in a sense, a single distributed organism for the purpose of watching the dark. And now here, around the 75% mark of our case, is where the real flip happens. Because you've been hearing all of this and probably thinking, okay, ancient humans survived because they were better organized than I assumed. Smarter cooperators, logistical geniuses. And that's true. But there's a deeper layer. The reason this matters for you, right now, sitting wherever you're sitting, is that almost everything about your modern psychology was shaped by this fight you don't even remember. You know that feeling, the one where you suddenly turn around in an empty parking garage. The hair on the back of your neck. The instinct that someone is behind you, even though there's no one there. That's not random anxiety. That's a feature. 2 million years of being hunted has wired you to scan, to glance, to feel watched. The reason a cracking twig in the woods at night makes your heart spike is because every ancestor of yours who didn't have that reaction got eaten before they could pass on their relaxed temperament. You are descended exclusively from the paranoid ones. That low-grade vigilance you can't switch off, the way you sleep lighter when you're alone in a new place, the way you instinctively position yourself with your back to a wall in a restaurant, none of that is a personality flaw. None of that is something to medicate away. It's the same machinery that kept your great-great-great-great-grandmother alive when she was carrying a baby through leopard country at dusk. Your nervous system is not broken. It's running, in a modern bedroom, software that was written for the savannah. And this is the moment to be honest about something. A lot of modern struggles around sleep, around safety, around the strange exhaustion of living alone, They look like personal failures when you're inside them. You feel like you should be able to just relax, just sleep, just stop checking the door. But you are a member of a species that survived by never fully relaxing, by always having someone awake, by never sleeping outside the group. We are the descendants of the ones who treated solitude at night as a deadly emergency. You are not failing at modern life. You are succeeding perfectly at ancient life. In a world that no longer rewards it, let's pull the case together. The popular explanation says, ancient humans survived predators because they were smart and had tools. The evidence says something different. It says we survived because we slept in shifts, so the dark was never unwatched. We carried each other's children, so no mother was ever a straggler. We grew shoulders that could throw, so predators paid a price for approaching. We grew eyes that could be read, so a single glance became a group alarm. And only much later, almost as a final layer, did we add fire, not as the foundation, but as the finishing touch on a survival strategy that was already, by then, hundreds of thousands of years old. The lone genius with a sharpened stick is a story we like because it flatters the modern individual. The real story is quieter and, honestly, more beautiful. It's a story about a soft, slow, fangless primate that survived the most dangerous predators ever to walk the earth by refusing ever to be alone. By treating other people, including their children, including their elderly, including the ones who couldn't contribute, as the actual technology. The first human invention was not the hand axe, it was the group. And that's worth sitting with for a second. Because if you've ever felt that the modern world is harder than it should be, that you're tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, anxious in a way logic doesn't soothe, lonely in a way scrolling doesn't touch, there's a reason. You were not built to do this by yourself. None of us were. The version of you that is struggling in a quiet apartment at 2 a.m. is not weak. It's just trying to run a 2 million-year-old program that requires other people and finding that the other people are behind glass now. You survived the leopards. You survived the cave bears. You survived the long, dark nights before the fire. You did it together, every time, for 2 million years. The fact that part of you still expects that, still reaches for it, still aches when it's missing, that isn't a flaw in you. That's the oldest, truest thing about you. And it never stopped being true.